Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Who's in charge of your finances? Andrea Bevis, Senior Vice President at UBS Private Wealth Management, joins me to discuss the results from the Own Your Wealth 2020 report and why it is beneficial for women to participate in long-term finances. Andrea, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Nice to be here.
Give us some background on the Own Your Worth report. Why did UBS create this study on U.S. women?
UBS recognized two major trends with respect to women. The first was this increase in divorce rate in women, and the second was the increase in life expectancy of women. And due to these two factors, 8 out of 10 women will find themselves financially responsible for their net worth at some point during their life. And unfortunately, what this report found is that many of these women do not feel adequately prepared to take over the financial planning, the long-term financial planning component of their life.
And we talk about being in charge of long-term financial decisions. Women stress equal participation in making these decisions, but as you had said, that's not reflected in the data. Is there any difference in the findings with women of color, education, and income levels? What does the data drill down into?
So 49% of women let their spouses take the lead with respect to financial decisions, long-term financial decisions, less so of the day-to-day, the budget and paying the bills and so forth. What's most surprising about this research is that this 50% rate really is pretty consistent across education levels, across ages, across a working spouse, working, non-working spouse. It's really quite consistent at the 50% threshold.
How about millennials? Do they approach it any better or worse?
Surprisingly, millennials are more likely than any other generation to defer these decisions, these long-term planning decisions, to their spouses. And what's most surprising is before getting married, millennials, the vast majority of millennials say that their intention is to participate or lead the long-term planning conversations. But ultimately, once married, it falls back to this 50% participation level, unfortunately, and very surprisingly.
Why do you think women defer to their spouses?
Women defer for a variety of reasons. What I have found is most women lack the confidence and they don't know where to start the financial planning conversation. Another reason are these entrenched roles within the household. So men just take care of the long-term investing and the women just go along with it. Complacency and lack of interest is another reason. And finally, I would say that money is unfortunately still a taboo subject in society. And women just prefer to keep the peace and go along with the status quo. And that's what leads us to where we are currently.
And as you had mentioned, 8 out of 10 women will be forced to make these choices. So what are the benefits for women who participate in long-term finances?
Ultimately, it's all about setting yourself up for success over the long term and to avoid these negative financial surprises. Death or a health issue or divorce, those are really stressful life moments, right? And then to add this component where you have to take over your long-term financial planning and you feel ill-equipped, that's a lot of change all at once. So the sooner that women can start getting involved in financial planning, the better. They're going to feel more confident and they're going to be more ready to make these difficult decisions in the moment.
Do you think there's a chance for progress as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? I mean, we have been forced with no other option but to look at our finances to make sure that we are either prepared for what's happening now or it's a good wake-up call for thinking about longer-term planning. Do you think this is a good time to act?
Absolutely. I would say the silver lining of this pandemic is that, and the economic fallout is that these conversations are more important today than they ever have been before. And there's this renewed focus on financial well-being across the board, both men and women. So this is the ideal time to start the conversation. The research found that 2/3 of women, due to the pandemic, intend to focus on their financial planning decisions. But the key and operative word is they intend to. And what we need to change this intent into action.
Certainly. And to wrap up here, I would imagine men have a role to play as well when we talk about equal participation.
Absolutely. Both men and women have a role. And what we find is men want their spouses to be involved. There is a seat at the table for their spouse, it's open. So the onus is on both men and women jointly to participate in these conversations and plan out and schedule times to talk about these long term planning decisions that affect your family and the next generation.
All right, Andrea, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining me on Trade Talks.
Thanks.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.